So I asked you guys on my community tab just to give me your favorite team's most overrated player in your eyes. So I have one overrated player that you guys said for every NBA team today. We're going to go through it and I'm going to let you guys know, do I agree with this or do I disagree with this? And remember, overrated doesn't mean they're bad by any means. They may be the third best player in the NBA, but if everybody starts saying that they're the best player in the NBA, technically that means they're overrated, but still means they're one of the best players in the league. And for some of these, it may be an in-depth explanation, and some of these, it just may be the player's name, and that is fine. And we are going to start things off with the Washington Wizards, and this one comes from Mr. Mosen, and he says that the most overrated player on the Wizards is Kyle Kuzma. And to be honest with him, I do agree. I think Kyle Kuzma is an overrated player. I wouldn't give out multiple first-round picks. I don't even know if I would give out one first-round pick for Kyle Kuzma at the trade deadline. I don't really think he's been a productive player over the last 2 years in Washington. Now, I get it. It's in a bad environment, but this year, Kuzma is averaging 16 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 2 assists, shooting 42% from the field, 27% from three, and 68% from the line. I know he's been dealing with some injuries this year, but over the last 4 years of his career, he's been a sub 35% three-point shooter. You're not going to get great defense. You may get some good playmaking here or there, but I just think when it matters the most in the playoffs, he is not good enough to be on a closing five for a team that has real expectations on winning a championship. So yeah, I'm going to agree with this one. For Cam Bob, he says for the Golden State Warriors, Brandon Podzemski. I'm also going to agree with this one. And I think this is pretty much a gimme. Somebody that has a really good rookie year, at least relative to their expectations coming in. And for Pods, he was drafted 19th overall, so maybe he didn't have as high as expectations as somebody like a Scoot Henderson. And he had a good rookie year, objectively a good rookie year. But now in hindsight, when the Warriors were going to refuse to put Pods in any Lowry marketing trade, and what he's doing this year, yeah, he is overrated. So far this year, Pods is averaging 7.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's shooting 38% from the field and 24% from three throughout 23 plus games, which is kind of crazy. That is a decent sample size that Podzemski has been a negative player for the Warriors this year. Yeah, I still think he can impact the box score in different ways. He can make an extra pass. He can dive for loose balls, get into the passing lanes. But for what he could have been as a combo guard next to Steph Curry this year, it has been a disaster. ABD says for the Minnesota Timberwolves that his answer is going to be Jaden McDaniels. Not nearly as good of a defender as he was for the last 2 years. He seems incapable of taking an offensive leap with his 52% true shooting percentage. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been outplaying him, and it feels like every game he's doing so on both ends. And honestly, I do think Jaden McDaniels is overrated. I do think he has been overrated, at least offensively, for the last few years. And don't get me wrong, I still think he's an elite defender. I actually think he's better than what this person is giving him credit for this year, because he's has to do a ton on the perimeter at times, especially when he's playing with not as good perimeter defenders like Mike Conley, Dante DiVincenzo at times, and definitely Julius Randle. But man, how can you not look at that 2023 season for Jaden McDaniels and just be disappointed with him not taking an offensive leap? He averaged 12 points and shot 51% from the field and 39% in 2023. Last year, he shot 48% from the field, a 3% drop off, and 33% from three, a 6% drop off, and 10 points per game. And this year, he's averaging under 10 points a night. And for what he was in 2023 as a 39% three-point shooter, he's shooting 30% from three this year. He was a 51% overall shooter in 2023, and he's shooting 44% this year. And when you look at his contract, I think objectively, he is overrated because of the defense. And when the offense isn't going to be as valuable, it really hurts his value as a player overall. Man, you guys are just giving me ones that I agree with. Hyper AB says, Anthony Simons, that's all I need to say. Yeah, I also agree Anthony Simons is overrated. And I think this could also be a similar case for Kyle Kuzma. I'll give Anthony Simons the benefit of the doubt. He's been in a poor environment since they traded away Damian Lillard, or even before they traded away Damian Lillard, as the Trailblazers were not a good team objectively. This year, Anthony Simons is averaging 16 points. He's shooting 40% from the field, 32% from three. He is not a good defender. I don't think the playmaking has really taken a step that I would have liked it to. I don't think this is a well-constructed Trailblazers team in the slightest. So maybe if he did go to a team like the Orlando Magic that needs offense, or the Houston Rockets, say, hypothetically, yeah, he can excel more in that role. I just don't know how he's going to be without the ball in his hands and how he could be as a help defender. And I don't think I would trade multiple first-round picks. He's 25 years old right now. He's making a decent amount of money. Yeah, I'll say Anthony Simons is overrated. All right, that's 4 for 4 to start things off. Okay, finally, I'm going to disagree with one. This one comes from SY, and he says, for the OKC Thunder, it's Alex Caruso. I hate saying it, but even though he's a massive addition for our defense, he just hasn't shown much on offense. I hope he steps up his game tune and Thunder up. Now, this person has every right to be mad at Alex Caruso's offense this year. It is bad. 39% from the field, 27% from three, and 71% from the line. 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. And yeah, that is objectively really bad, but I don't think he's been overrated to much because his value was strictly on defense. I think when we go back to Jaden McDaniels, he was looked at as this player that could excel on both ends of the floor. I think whatever you got on offense was just an added benefit from Alex Caruso. You're playing with house money because of what he can do on the defensive end of the floor. I didn't really know if he was going to be in the closing lineup for this Thunder team, and maybe that's a hot take for saying he's not overrated. I just didn't really think we overrated his offense too much, and I'm going to hope it regresses back to what it was last year, because if he stays with these shooting splits this year, he may be one of the worst offensive players in the league, but he's still an elite defender. So I don't know if that's hypocritical for me to say that Jaden McDaniels is overrated and Alex Caruso, I wouldn't say he's underrated. I would just say he's properly rated. KJJ says, man, I really hate to say it, but it's going to be Devin Booker for the Phoenix Suns. I'm also going to disagree with this. I don't think Devin Booker is underrated. I think he's properly rated as well. Devin Booker this year, I think, has been disappointing to what he's been in years past. He is shooting 43% from the field and 33% from three, down from his career averages. He is averaging 25 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. And I think at times without Kevin Durant, you would have liked Devin Booker to maybe win them some games with just his individual self. But yeah, the Suns team isn't great at times on both ends around Devin Booker. And I don't think he's overrated because we don't really have Devin Booker in top 8 player in the league talks or top 10 player in the league talks. He's always around, I feel like, that 11 to 15 range. And I don't think that's changed too much this year. Ren says for the San Antonio Spurs, it's Keldon Johnson. Consistency massively dropped off ever since Wemby joined the team. And he's not wrong, because Keldon Johnson really broke out after that 2022 season. He ended up getting a nice payday from the San Antonio Spurs before his 4th year. And while his numbers did go up scoring wise, with the volume going up, the efficiency dropped, and it's been dropping almost every year since. He was slightly better last year than he was in 2023, but the start of this year, he's played over 20 games. He's averaging 12 points, 5 rebounds, shooting 44% from the field and 28% from three. He's owed $19 million this year, $17.5 million next year, same thing in 2027. And yeah, I guess I'll say that Keldon Johnson is slightly overrated. I don't think he's as much overrated as somebody like a Kyle Kuzma or an Anthony Simons. He's 25 years old, and I think we've known what he could be as a player. Now, this efficiency is bad right now, and maybe he just needs a new environment because they're obviously more focused on Wemby and Devin Vassell and Stephon Castle, as well as Jeremy Sohan. And I feel like Keldon Johnson has been bumped down that pecking order. Sun says here for the Houston Rockets, I really hate to say this, but I feel like we, as Rocket fans, had so much expectations for Jalen Green. Like, he should be proving why he is better than his rival Cade, but damn, he's just inconsistent at the moment. He still doesn't doubt his quality, and seeing Shea also had a rough start to his NBA career, even though he was promising, but Jalen's overrated a little bit, but he believes he will bounce back. Now, I still think Jalen Green is overrated. I think that's not too much of a hot take because Jalen Green last year was pretty much good for 1 month, but there's no hiding his efficiency this year and his inconsistencies. One game, he'll drop 35 plus points on good efficiency, and the other game, it's just he's shooting you out of these games. So far on the year, 19 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He's shooting sub 40% from the field and 32% from three, and they just gave him $100 million on that rookie extension. And I think when the national media talks about Jalen Green, or he's like the poster for the Houston Rockets when they have an upcoming game, when it should be somebody like a Dylan Brooks or an Alperen Şengün, yeah, I think he's overrated. Norm says here for the Toronto Raptors, it's Emmanuel Quickley. He just got paid and hasn't played at all this year. There's too many injury concerns. People say Barrett was a negative asset in the trade, but I knew he was going to be good, as he should, and he should be an all-star this year the way he's been playing. I'm going to disagree with Norm. Now, I do think RJ Barrett somehow was underrated when he got traded to the Toronto Raptors, because I agree, people thought he was a negative asset, but he has been great in Toronto. And you know what? Like, I disagree. Like, I was super high on Emmanuel Quickley going into the year. I thought he could win most improved. And if he was putting up what he has right now in those 3 games through 20 plus games, I would agree, but he's just been injured, which kind of stinks. But a lot of people thought he was like one of the best young assets in the league. He could have won most improved, including me. So if you want to say that's why he should be overrated, I can't really disagree with you, but I think it's unfair to say Emmanuel Quickley's overrated when he's only played 3 games this year due to injury. Also says here for the Detroit Pistons, it's Asor Thompson. I need him to turn it up. He is not playing with the same intensity and defense he was before the diagnosis. And yeah, I gotta disagree. We gotta pump the brakes here. Asor Thompson is 6 games playing after being diagnosed with blood clots 8 months ago. Yeah, let's just be a little bit patient with Asor Thompson. He's 21 years old. Nobody thought he was going to come back this season and have to be as good as somebody like a Paolo Banchero or a Brandon Miller. We were going to be patient with Asor Thompson. He's still just 21 years old. He's still a good defender, and I think we got to be okay with him not being as maybe energetic or as athletic as he was when he was playing last year, because that's going to come over the course of this year. He just needs to get ramped up. For the Pelicans, it's Zion Williamson. He's never consistently healthy, and I have no idea how we thought he would never have an injury again. Yeah, I don't know. I think Zion is properly rated. I don't think he's underrated, but Zion always had the injury concerns with him, and he had that great 2024 season last year. He played around 31 minutes a night, a career high 70 games. He was averaging a career high in assists with 5 a night, 6 rebounds, 23 points, shot 57% from the field. And everybody's like, they should trade Brandon Ingram, and you build around Zion. And now Zion is hurt once again this year, like he's been for almost every year of his career. And that is fair, but I don't think him being injured makes him overrated. If you want to say he's overrated as an asset to build around, that's fine with me. But I think as an individual player, when he's out there, he's still really good. And I don't think he's overrated just based off his play. Mr. Mellon says here for the Indiana Pacers, it's probably Jarris Walker. Halliburton is getting hot now, and I just don't think that Walker can be an all-star type of guy anymore. I still think he could be a good role player. This one is tough. I'm not going to disagree, but I'm also not going to agree. I know that's kind of a cop-out of a take. I would say he's properly rated, but I would say maybe, yeah, if you thought he was going to be an all-star type of guy, maybe you're overrating the asset you thought he could be. This year, through 25 games, he's averaging 5.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, shooting 43% from the field and 39% from three. I just wish he had more consistent playing time or maybe more consistent volume in a game. And I think Rick Carlisle and this Pacers staff did not really do him justice in his rookie year. And I think we're seeing those effects this year, maybe sometimes with his confidence. So I don't think he's overrated. I would even say maybe he's slightly underrated and needs more time to shine. Deer says here for the Denver Nuggets, it's interesting. Everybody has been kind of underperforming this year, so it's hard to say. And I hate to admit this, but I think Aaron Gordon would have much smaller contract if he played with someone other than Jokic. Good for him for securing that bag, and I enjoy having him, but I don't think he is good as a salary reflects. And I think what Veer said is definitely true, because I think Aaron Gordon, from getting traded to Orlando to Denver, definitely earned him a little bit more money. He's still a good player objectively in this league, and I think going into this year, or I guess more so going into last year after they won the title, people thought he was a top 40 guy in the league, and I think we had to pump the brakes a little bit on that. So yeah, maybe Aaron Gordon is slightly overrated because his three-point shot has dropped off a little bit, especially in that 2021 season where he was shooting high 30s from three. He has been good from three to start off this year, but he's dealt with some injuries. So, you know, if he can go back to being a consistent three-point shooter, I think Aaron Gordon may become underrated again, but it's tough to say someone's underrated when you're getting paid all that money. Matt says here for the Nets, Cam Thomas would have to be the only one I can think of. He's only overrated by other Nets fans, and they act like all he needs is a green light and he'll be the next Kobe. He's good, but seriously lacks maturity when it comes to his decision making and shot selection, and that is just way too inconsistent. Their take here, because Cam Thomas can really operate on this Brooklyn Nets team, I don't know if he'd be able to be like this Cam Thomas on a team where he's the third scoring option, or they're trying to lock in on defense in the fourth quarter, and he can't really just run iso ball throughout this game. And what is he going to be like in a 7-game playoff series where the opposing coaches and defense can really match up against him and know where his strengths and weaknesses are over a multiple game stretch? So saying Cam Thomas is overrated maybe for what the Nets may think they can get from him at the deadline, I would say he's either overrated or properly rated. I think no longer is Cam Thomas underrated. Marksy says here for the Dallas Mavericks, Klay Thompson. I mean, duh. You guys are giving me tough ones to disagree with. Yeah, I think Klay Thompson is overrated. I think we're looking at Klay Thompson more so as the name of Klay Thompson and not as the current player of Klay Thompson. I think he has lost another step this year with the Dallas Mavericks. He's still a fine player, but we really have to get out of our heads that he is the Klay Thompson of old. This year, he's averaging around 13 points, 39% from the field, and 37% from three. Like I said, he's still a productive player. He could still be a good three-point shooter in this league. I just don't know if he should be the closing five on this Mavericks team anymore, because I like guys like Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall a little bit more than Klay nowadays. Houston says for the Orlando Magic, it's Cole Anthony. I think it's clear now that he isn't efficient enough to be playing as much as he does, and I really am waiting for when we call up Mac McClung to hopefully replace him. Damn. I think this year, yeah, Cole Anthony has definitely been disappointing, and I think if you said a couple years ago Cole Anthony was overrated, you would have been right, but now I would say Cole Anthony's probably becoming more properly rated. You're looking at what his numbers are, you're looking at what he did in the past, and you're not really buying into the efficiency with the volume he had. I was honestly shocked when Orlando extended him a couple years ago, and I thought maybe at that time he was overrated, but I think when you're looking at them at their lowest of lows, and that's what we are looking at Cole Anthony right now, in this point of his career, you can't really call him overrated anymore because everybody knows he's underperforming. Devo's strongest soldier, what a name, says for the LA Lakers, it's Austin Reaves. Lakers fans act like he's untouchable when he's clearly regressed as a playmaker, and his shot quality and defense are atrocious. You know what's crazy? Any Laker you bring up is probably going to be overrated by Lakers fans and by the media because they're on the LA Lakers, and that is not their fault. So yeah, Austin Reaves, he's probably overrated for what his numbers and his play style and what he could be in a trade. Like, you're not trading Austin Reaves to headline of a LaMelo Ball package. You know what's funny? Like, a Laker that just may be underrated because people think he's like the worst player in the league is probably like D'Angelo Russell, and that's what overrated and underrated means. Oh my god. Oh my god. Thomas Bryant was just traded from the Miami Heat to the Indiana Pacers. You gotta be kidding me. How's my live reaction right there? It's kind of funny. Honestly, Pacers needed a big man. He's not good at all, but is still in the rotation somehow. Yeah, I don't really think Jericho Sims is overrated. I think we just know what he is at this point. I don't think Jericho Sims is underrated because I don't really think he's a good player. But now that Precious Achiuwa is back, we're not going to see too much more of Jericho Sims this year. And when Mitchell Robinson is back, I don't even know if he's going to be on this team. DeVito says that for the Sacramento Kings, it's Keegan Murray. You know what's funny? Because when I talked about one hot take for every team, in that video, whoever put it in for the Kings said that Keegan Murray is underrated. And I agree more here with DeVito here. I think he's overrated. Because Keegan was supposed to be the X factor for the Kings team this season. And I feel like his shot has just gone down every single year since his rookie season. He just doesn't have that confidence anymore. And maybe playing in a half court with Sabonis, Fox, and DeRozan, you're going to lose a little bit more of your confidence than you may have had a couple years ago when you were clearly one of the top scoring options. And this is before Malik Monk really became a big piece for Sacramento. So I would say Keegan Murray is overrated offensively, but you know what's funny? I actually think he's underrated defensively. I think he's a pretty good defender. Dr. Pond says here for the Utah Jazz, it's Keontae George. Reminds me of a young Alec Burks, totally out of control, turning the ball over, taking wild shots, and playing little to no defense. Oh man, this is a tough one because Keontae George is being asked to do way too much early in his career. And I actually think it impressed me last year, even with the efficiency not being great. Like I mentioned though, he was just really asked to do a ton more than he probably expected coming out of Baylor. But we're now in year 2 of this. He's 21 years old. He's still shooting sub 40% from the field, still shooting 33% from 3, but he's a good free throw shooter. I think he can come around. So maybe he's overrated right now, but I don't think he's going to be on that Alec Burks trajectory. I think he's going to be a better player than that. We just need to see better players around him. And I don't know if that's going to come anytime soon in Utah. Scour says for the Charlotte Hornets, it's Miles Bridges. Having someone else other than LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller with the ability to take over a quarter is inherently valuable, but at the 3-4 position, I wish his shooting splits and defense were better, especially when his roster is at full health and he acts like a tertiary scorer. And you know what? I'm fine with calling Miles Bridges overrated. I think he's obviously one of the more hated players in the league for obvious reasons. And if he was just a little bit better this year, you could probably make an argument he's underrated, but I do agree here with Skylar, and I don't think he's been good this season. I guess compared to what he's being paid, he is overrated, but I also think he's probably more properly rated. It's tough. Ashton here says Terry Rosier for the Miami Heat. When I mean it's tough is like when a player's not playing well, and I don't think Rozier's been good this year, it's hard to say that they're overrated because I think maybe at a time Terry Rozier was overrated, probably last year when he got traded, and now he's turning to be more neutral, right? Like he's not super overrated anymore. I wouldn't say he's underrated. So yeah, I'll go with properly rated for Terry Rozier. CJ says here for the Atlanta Hawks, Onyeka Okongwu. He's been talked about like the next good switchable center, but he doesn't look like he will become a starting caliber center anytime soon. No hate towards him, but he's talked about like he should start. Oh man, I thought Onyeka Okongwu was going to be in conversations for most improved player this year. I've been just yelling that the Atlanta Hawks need to start him over Clint Capella. And if we're going to just bring out the definition of overrated, I do think Okongwu is overrated. I think he's a good player. He just turned 24 years old, and I hope he could be the building block center with Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Zachary Reese-Shea, and Dyson Daniels around him, because that is a damn fun starting and closing 5. But I think the expectations that we had for Okongwu have yet to been reached. So I guess by the definition, Okongwu is overrated, and that hurts me to say. Heath Miller says Marcus Smart makes hustle plays and is a good vet, but makes weird plays every now and then and is very inconsistent on offense. I actually think Marcus Smart has become more underrated. I know he's getting paid a ton of money. I know his offense hasn't been great to start off this season, because I do think Marcus Smart still makes plenty of plays that don't show up in the box score, because I think he's still a really good help defender. He's still a good on-ball defender. He's not the player he was in 2022 when he won Defensive Player of the Year. He's now on the wrong side of 30. He's had multiple injuries in Memphis, but I don't think Marcus Smart is super overrated. KW says for my Clippers, I wouldn't say we have one, but Norman Powell is probably the closest to being considered overrated. Yeah, I can agree with this. Norman Powell has been a great player for the LA Clippers this year. Throughout 18 games, he's averaging 23.5 points, shooting 49% from the field, 48% from 3, and 84% from the line. He's been great over his last couple of games coming back from an injury. But I think when you're going to rely on Norman Powell to maybe be one of your top scoring options, I think you're going to eventually be disappointed. But if he could be exactly what he is right now, which I think is a way more efficient scorer than James Harden, and you get Kawhi Leonard back to be a number 1, I think maybe that makes him overrated, thinking that he could be a good number 2 in the playoffs and he's more of a number 3. So I think Norman Powell is a tough one. Let me know in the comments. Do you guys think Norman Powell is overrated, underrated, or properly rated? Nolan Spin says for the Celtics, it is Jrue Holiday. He can have a big night offensively and his defense is great, but we need more from him. And I still think Jrue Holiday is an elite defender in this league. There's just so many good elite defenders nowadays that I don't know if he's going to be on an all defensive team this year. He's made 6 in his career, and he's still objectively a good defender. And Jrue Holiday has been an elite 3-point shooter over the last few years of his career, but this year he is shooting just 33% from 3 on 5.5 attempts a night. Everybody on this Boston Celtics team is knocking down their threes outside of Jrue Holiday. And maybe for the money he's getting paid and the name value of Jrue Holiday, he is overrated, but he's still a very impactful player. Noah says for the Cavs, it's George Niang. I love the roster, but the notion that Niang is a high-level 3-and-D player is laughable at best, as his defense is only average, and when he's having an off night, it is extremely noticeable, and he's a borderline unplayable player. Yeah, this is an interesting one, because maybe you shouldn't have super high expectations for Niang, but that's where the Cavs are right now. They're in a great spot this year. Niang is averaging 8.5 points, 4 rebounds, and is shooting 46% from the field and 36% from 3. I think if you're going to rely on him to play a ton of minutes in the playoffs as a 3-and-D piece for you, yeah, maybe that makes him overrated a little bit, but if you ever watch him out there, he does look like me and you. He does look like somebody that you can play pickup with at your Lifetime Fitness, and he's out there getting paid millions of bucks to play basketball. So shout out to George Niang. JC Daniel says for the Chicago Bulls, it's Kobe White. He's incredibly streaky. He can give you 31 game and then 12 the next, and also doesn't play much defense and can be a turnover machine. I think that's fine. I think that's a fair take to say about Kobe White. He broke out last year, finished runner-up in most improved player voting. This year, maybe he hasn't been as effective at times. He's averaging 18 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. He's shooting 42% from the field and 37% from 3. Zach LaVine's been better offensively. Nikola Vucevic has been better offensively. But I think just seeing Kobe White still be this really good 3-point shooter makes me think that he's still going to be a fine player in this league. And last year wasn't just a flash in the pan. Could he be somebody you're going to legitimately build around? No. And if people thought that, yeah, he was definitely overrated. But I still think Kobe White's a good player and still on one of the best contracts in the league. Young says for the Bucks, it's Bobby Portis. Even though he's been much better as of late, he's super inconsistent, makes many mistakes offensively, and sometimes ruins the flow of the Bucks offense just to do his post-up game, which most time results in a turnover or miss. His defense is atrocious most of the time. Yeah, Bobby Portis is not a good defender whatsoever, and it's going to be tough in the playoffs as well for the Milwaukee Bucks trying to play help defense with Bobby Portis out there. But he's still a productive offensive player, so I don't think he's overrated in terms of his offense. Could he be overrated in terms of a player because of how much of his defense brings his value down? Sure, that's a fair take. And lastly for Philly, Felix says Caleb Martin and his broken jump shot. Had one good playoff run on the Heat, and that's it. Gotta stop giving him 25 minutes a night. Yeah, Caleb Martin hustles out there. He runs it up and down the floor. He's gonna get some offensive rebounds, some defensive rebounds, and he's gonna show his energy. But I do think we're learning a valuable lesson for the Miami Heat when you look at guys like Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin, that maybe they're gonna be best suited on the Miami Heat. Because yeah, Caleb Martin this year is shooting 40% from the field, 29% from 3, and 67% from the line. I do think he's gonna get better over the course of the year, but I feel like everybody that breaks out for the Miami Heat in the playoffs ends up becoming overrated on other teams. And that's gonna be it for me. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the overrated players that we talked about in this video. And also let me know if you want to see an underrated version of this as well. It would be a little bit more positive and I would enjoy that a ton. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.